Merriam-Webster describes love as a strong affection for another arising out of kinship or personal ties. Pinterest describes love as a deep, tender, strong feeling of affection toward a person and intense emotional attachment. Discord describes love as we'll come back to that, all right? Whatever your definition stands to be, however you view the concept of love, one thing stands to remain clear. It is fundamental to the human experience, and we are all searching for it. I describe love in the modern age as the desire to be understood, and subsequently, this is the reason why love exists in scarcity in our generation. If you've put this video on as background noise while you and your partner make love eyes at one another, I beg you, just give me a moment of your attention. And while you're at it, feel free to subscribe and like the video. Because the state of emotional connections which we are currently building is almost as fragile as Andrew Tate's masculinity. Now, what do I mean by fragile? Nothing seems to be concrete anymore. Situationships, flings, and e-dating have become disgustingly commonplace in lieu of long-term face-to-face connections. In no way am I attempting to discredit these relationships, except maybe Discord e-dating, but rather I'm trying to redefine the concept that love inherently exists within these environments. What is a situationship, if not a fleeting moment of intense feelings for someone you feel you cannot commit to? What is a fling, if not a once or more than once off routine of self-care in order to remind yourself that you are longing? What is e-dating, if not the lack of ability to socially integrate in a way that appeals to and draws in your desired romantic audience? The previously mentioned examples all draw on one common narrative, and that is want and desire, without the commitment of a physical or long-term partner. And it is becoming increasingly common to see these relationships develop. Do not misconstrue my intentions, dear viewer. I don't believe we should regress to the times when a woman who had just crossed 16 would be made to wed a man her father's age. Though this does still happen and is often relayed as a cultural practice, rather I intend to shift your perspective on the meaning and value of modern love and why exactly love is sometimes not enough in terms of justification to an action or desire. To be loved is to be known. Timothy Keller. This quote resurfaces on my Pinterest dashboard at least once a month. And while it is set on the basis of truth, in the regard that in order to be truly loved by a partner, you would be deeply known and understood by that partner, it is often misconstrued to mean your partner should know you on a level that would allow them to love you. I am not a relationship guru, nor a psychologist, though I believe that this concept, whether attributed to Timothy Keller's quote or intrinsically harbored, is part and parcel of why our generation struggles with vulnerability and the ability to maintain or establish a romantic relationship which carries deeper meaning than that of affection. You see, in the context of social media, we all have an image. Whether your image is public or private, mysterious or loud and obnoxious, upfront or laid back, we all share the commonality of crafting what we portray to the world in a way that is appealing to those who we wish to impress. When Keller speaks about being known, he does not refer to one's image. He refers to one's idiosyncrasies, the depths of one's psyche, and both the negative in tandem with the positive attributes of one's person. As a society, however, we wish to be known in a way that suits our level of vulnerability and openness. We do not wish to divulge our hearts to their full extent for fear that our perceived image will change, for fear that our negatives will be acknowledged and potentially loved anyway, for acknowledgement is linked to truth. When choosing to love, you should be putting your heart and being on the line. If that is not the case, it is not love, it's infatuation. Now, there are 3 levels to this. The first being the situationship or fling. The second being the virtual relationship or e-dating. And the third being the ability to commit to vulnerability. Hence the concept of love not being enough. Let's start with one most common among Gen Z at the moment. What the hell is a situationship? Who even included this shit in my script? I swear that's not even a real word. Okay, so from what I've gathered, A situationship is not casual, but it's not committed either. It can be sexual or romantic, or both. And it harbors the narrative of no strings attached. I don't understand the point. It's so people can receive attention without commitment. Yeah, okay, thank you. I was getting there. A situationship provides humans with the opportunity to receive and give affection and attention to one another without the commitment of a label or responsibilities of a fully fledged relationship. That's so stupid. Who even comes up with this shit? To me, situationships shouldn't be defined as their own concept. If you inherently feel the need to label something as a situationship, surely you can define something as a relationship. I've seen people more invested in their situationship than a real relationship, and it's genuinely becoming concerning. I mean, how many times have you seen posts and stories where people are trying to draw the attention of their situationship instead of just speaking outright to them? I don't understand why we're trying to play this manipulation game with love. It doesn't make sense. Humans all harbor it, and if it's not shared, it's not shared. You can't wordplay and image trick someone into loving you. That's not how it works. No matter how hard you try with a situationship, you're not going to get someone to love you if they don't love you. That's just how it is. So surely you should be moving on to something more concrete with someone that does actually love you. Obviously, this ties back to older relationships and relationships of generations past, where oftentimes it would be a woman forced into a relationship with a man that she does not truly love, which was not always the case. But then again, we also had limited availability. You couldn't date someone that was 3 countries away from you and call it a relationship because we didn't have the internet back then. It was kind of, you're in my immediate vicinity, you don't look too bad, so I guess I'll love you. Just because we have the availability of the internet doesn't mean we should be using and abusing it to create feelings and relationships that aren't really there and aren't really going to work. Obviously, situationships aren't necessarily all online, and they're not necessarily just based on a virtual connection from someone that is quite far away from you. They could be in your immediate vicinity. But at the same time, those weren't ever called situationships. They were called flings or once-offs or affairs or one-night stands. But now you're calling them a situationship? I don't understand that. What does situationship even mean? If you love someone, you love them. If you don't love them, you don't love them. Don't put a label on something that is clearly something else. Don't put a label on something, period, if you do not feel sure about it. That's a whole other conversation topic. If you feel deeply enough for the person who you are casually but not so casually exchanging romantic passes with, surely then it's some sort of love. Now, speaking of types of love, let's quickly review the 6 forms of love defined by ancient Greece. We have, now please excuse my pronunciation, agape or agape, I'm not quite sure, meaning the highest form of love and charity towards others. Unconditional love. Eros, meaning love defined by a sexual passion, alternatively referred to as intimate love. We have philia, relating to platonic love or a love founded on the basis of a friendship. We have storge, I'm not quite sure, a familial love used to describe the affection between parents and children. We have philautia, meaning to love oneself and take into account one's own happiness. And then we have xenia, a love comprised of hospitality and the terms guest friendship or ritualized friendship. And then we have e-dating, where Discord mods fall for their Discord. Who wrote this? Who wrote the script? Genuinely, who wrote this? I don't remember adding the... Okay. Anyway, like I was saying, if the affection you feel towards your non-committal situationship, part-time lover, partner, person you found on the street that you think has nice eyes, falls into any of these categories, it could very well be defined as love. However, if we take into account the fact that a situationship is set on the basis of a lack of commitment and lack of vulnerability to that partner, we can't truly say that you are in love with them. Though it is love in some form, that form is not enough to constitute what could become a relationship. Now, the second level, and arguably the most controversial, especially in a time where long-distance relationships are becoming increasingly popular, is virtual relationships or e-dating. How often do you see short-form content displaying a couple meeting for the first time after years of long-distance dating? Too often, right? And I hate happy couples, they make me sick. How often do you think those couples stay together after physically uniting for the first time? I suppose we don't have an exact number because not everyone shares their personal lives on the internet. Weirdos. But what we can deduce is the hypothetical outcome in most of these situations. You spend a year talking to someone over text. Maybe you even video call every night and fall asleep on call together. You say you love one another. You say you're in love with one another. Are you really? You don't know what that person smells like. You don't know the environment they live in. This sounds like I'm saying they might be poor. I meant the level of cleanliness. You don't know what their idiosyncratic behaviors are. And if you meet them and are to then decide that one of the above mentioned examples or one of your own is a criteria you cannot budge on for a partner, you won't want to be with them. Ergo, can you really call it love or being in love? Can you deduce your feelings for someone without ever being in their physical presence? I'm inclined to say no. Now, the aforementioned case isn't always true. Sometimes long distance couples do work out and they get married with their white picket fence in their suburban home, and they live happily ever after with 13 children that are clearly overpopulating Earth. But that is very seldom the case. I may be sitting there listening to this thinking, Ren, you insane little ginger woman, how does this link back to love not being enough? My young Padawan, you know not yet where my theory lies. Let me enlighten you. You see, what you feel for someone whom you know only through a screen is not love. You may be in love with the image they present of themselves, the stature you've created in your mind, and the idea of being with them. You may even be in love with the truths they've shared about their lives. But until you've spent time in their physical space, you cannot call it love. It is simply the facade of love. And oftentimes, the facade is not enough to make someone stay. Therefore, the idea love is not quite enough. Look, up until this point, I've used loopholes and roundabout answers to describe why love is not enough. But let's get serious with our third level and use a properly committed relationship to illustrate my point. Here I will refer back to Timothy Keller's banger of a quote, "To be loved is to be known. In order to love and be loved, one must be vulnerable enough to be known and understood in one's most base and raw form. No basis of love has ever and will ever be built on the false image we wish to portray." I'm not implying that building an image is inherently wrong or bad. It's what we're inclined to do as humans, as a society. But if you do not strip this image down to your most inner core when intending to love and be loved, you will not achieve your goal. The idea that you love someone and that they believe they love you in turn is not enough in order to truly say you are in love with one another. You are in like, yes. You both intend to love one another, yes. But in order to reach that on a level which is factual, you need to be able to be vulnerable in the highest degree with that person. Not a stone should be left unturned in your heart where they could find another ounce of you to love. Whether this be in a romantic or platonic context, the concept of loving someone is not enough to substantiate that feeling and to receive that same feeling. If you cannot commit to and see yourself fully opening up to your partner, how can you say that you are in love with them? There is a huge difference, in my mind, between love and being in love with someone. Love is a feeling. Love is the word that you can ascribe to something that you may be feeling in a moment. Yes, I love my bed. I love sleeping, but I'm not in love with my bed. There is a vast difference to the two. To say that you are in love means that your being, your mind, your emotions, and your feelings are physically in a state where you constantly love that thing. Whether you are upset, angry, feel any type of negative emotion, underneath all of that, you still love, which constitutes being in love. And in order to achieve the state of being in love, you need to be able to see that person in their most raw and base form. Imagine it as a test. How can you say that you will constantly love someone in all their forms if you do not know all of their forms? And that can only come from being with someone in all of their forms, physical or virtual. That can only come from spending enough time with someone wherein you can see all of their different shapes and you can see all of their different emotions and how they are portrayed. This is exactly why I say that e-dating, situationships, and virtual relationships do not constitute being in love. Because a situationship is a fleeting moment of love or romance. You are not with that person for long enough to ascribe the feeling as being in love with them. You do not know if you are in love with their character. You are simply in love with the image of them that they are portraying to everyone. In terms of e-dating and virtual dating, you don't know what their physical person is like. You don't know what their idiosyncratic behaviors are in everyday life. Therefore, how do you know that you love them in all their shapes and forms? Even with long-term relationships, even with committed relationships, this type of thing can happen. And especially now as a society, we are so inclined not to be vulnerable enough with our partner in order to strip back the layers so that they may find out who we truly are beneath everything. Social media has created a space where anyone can be anything as long as you portray yourself in the right light. Look at me, for example. Each and every one of you knows what I look like. Alright? But you don't know how I sleep at night. You don't know what I eat for breakfast every morning. You don't know how I call my mother when I need her. You don't understand the deep and intricate layers of my life. This is more on a parasocial degree, which we spoke about in the last video that I made. But how can you say that you've fallen in love with someone that you've never actually spent physical time with? The same can be said for committed and long-term relationships. If you are with someone, regardless of the amount of time, but you are not able to be vulnerable with that person, or they are not able to be vulnerable with you in turn, how can you truly know their deepest and most dark desires that they do not present to the rest of the world? How can you know who they truly are as a person? If you are with someone for 2 to 3 years, yes, you may call it a long-term committed relationship, but if you find out that they've killed someone, and you've only found that out 2 or 3 years on, unless you're Joe Goldberg, how can you say that you are still in love with them? That's an extreme example, but maybe we can use something a little bit more common. If you are with someone for 2 to 3 years and you find out that they pee in the shower, okay, that's a bit of a crude example, but still, you find out that they pee in the shower for whatever reason. That is a weird idiosyncrasy that you cannot oversee, and it means that you fall out of love with them. But does that constitute you ever being in love with them in the first place? No. Because once you are in love with someone, once you share that commonality of being in the state of love, you cannot let it go. Yes, it may dissipate. Yes, it may whittle. But then it is not being in love. It is simply love. You need to make the distinction between the two because there is a huge difference. And I think that we now, as a population, as a people, as a society, we tend to forget that there is a difference. We use the word love so flippantly that it almost becomes commonplace, that it has lost a lot of its meaning. Relationships start now, and within 2 to 3 months, couples are saying that they love one another. And in no way am I putting those couples down, because I'm one of those people. But can they say that they are in love with one another? Yes, perhaps they're both very open and giving and sharing and vulnerable people. And within 2 to 3 months, they can say that they are in love with one another because they have shared everything with each other. But it's not common. And it never used to be common. I'm not saying that this is a new thing. It's a difference that we have never actually acknowledged as a people. And this is why love is not enough. You cannot simply love your partner if you wish to make actions and decisions based purely on that emotion. You need to be in love with them for those actions and decisions to hold the justification of love. Again, last little disclaimer, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a couples therapist. I am in no way qualified to talk on these topics. These are just personal opinions and they're things that I believe. If you disagree with me, go ahead, write your paragraph in the comment, write your hate comment, go for it. I really want to hear your views and opinions on this, and I'd love to know what you think. But for me, my opinions and views on this will not budge, because this is what I believe. It's what I've always believed in my almost 19 summers. This is what I believe in. And maybe it'll change, maybe it won't change, but I think that on a deeper level, it's not going to change, especially when you take into account the fact that I don't hold any regard to higher beings. And so everything that I build my opinions on it's intrinsic. If I sounded different during this recording, it's because I'm sick. But I'm still recording this video because I love you guys and I want you to eat well this week. So here you go. Here is a video, even though I'm sick and dying. Hope you all are having a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video and if you are enjoying the new content. Obviously, you're not obligated to. You can do whatever you want. You have free will. I mean, you can click off this video. Wait, don't click off the video, please. You can do whatever you want. You have free will. But it would really help me out if you subscribed and liked the video. And I will see you guys next time for another video. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I will see you then. Bye bye.